So Har's come over today to show us how he likes to plant mango trees. I found this particular mango tree which really needs to be planted. It's fruit punch, it's a great variety, but it either needs a bigger pot or to be in the ground. So it's a great plant to demonstrate all sorts of things on. So Har knows a lot about planting mango trees. He's done a lot himself, and he's certainly described to many people how he likes to plant a mango tree. And so today we're getting that on a video, so hopefully that will help our customers plant their trees and other people who live far away to do the same. So I picked out a spot in the back for this tree, and Har can show us exactly what he likes to do when planting a mango tree. So we're in the back of the house, and I chose this spot for a few reasons. One is nothing is growing here right now except for this very large royal palm, and another reason is it's the western exposure to the house. Some shade would be nice as far as keeping the house a little bit cooler, and the roots will hold the soil in a little bit. We're on top of a hill, so anything will help on that erosion control. And the final reason that I chose this spot now is that we just recently put in a new hose bib, so it'll be very easy to get this tree established. So here's Har to show you how to plant a plant.
First, we need to know if the plant is ready to transplant. This is basically a 1-gallon mango that within the last month was potted up into a 3-gallon container. If we try to take this out now to put into the ground, most of the soil around it will fall away. So if you buy a plant that's obviously not ready to take out of the pot, just take care of it in the pot for another like 3 months. These 3 plants have been in the pot just the right amount of time. They're not pot bound yet. These 2 are ready to transplant today. This little bit of new growth here is useless, so I'll cut it off, and we could take these older leaves off. But see how these leaves are hard? They won't wilt after you transplant the tree. This one has actually been cut back and has buds swelling but aren't burst out yet. So this would be the easiest of all to work with, but this one already has these nice 3-way branching. We definitely don't want to cut those off unless you're really wanting a super low tree, in which case you could cut it clear here. That would be extreme. If you want a super low tree, you can cut this clear down here and get low branching. But most people will want branches about here or here. This tree is already just the right amount of time to transplant, except that it has this new growth. Now, as Miss Chris was just saying, she would cut it back here so the new growth is immaterial. But if you want to keep the new growth, don't transplant this today. Keep it around for another month and a half until the leaves look nice and hard like this. If you transplant this today, this growth will wilt severely, and you'll probably lose that new growth. With stuff that's been in the pot just the right amount of time, actually, maybe this could stand another month in the pot. When I started to pull it out the normal way, it looked as though the root ball would fall apart. One can still transplant a tree like this very carefully even though it's been in the pot just the right amount of time, we do need to check for circling roots. See, this doesn't really have. Right here at the bottom though, we have a root that hit the bottom of the container and turned sideways. We don't want to leave that. It's in the wrong position. We want to cut it off and make sure that we get new roots started going straight away from the root ball. In this case, straight down. And on the sides, straight out to the sides. So this one actually isn't the perfect amount of time because it is falling apart. Look at that. So one can often tell just by looking, but sometimes one gets it wrong. Definitely got that one wrong. Let's see with this one. That also seems a little loose. Pot won't come off well with these roots sticking out, so we have to cut those off first. This has a lot more roots, obvious at the edge where the roots touch the pot. We want to cut all the roots off that touch the pot. That's just a simple rule. Not that the roots are contaminated from the plastic, it's just that they don't stop growing when they touch the pot. They turn in a wrong direction. And roots are not centipedes or worms or snakes. They can't reverse. They can't pull back, you know, to redirect. Only the root tips can change direction. So all the root behind the tip that's in the wrong spot stays in the wrong spot unless you cut it off. Some people grab and pull. That damages the roots and they end up matted. And often get infected from being damaged on the sides. So it takes 2 or 3 minutes to do a good job of this. And the tree can shock a little bit from having roots cut off. You do need to be sure to keep it well watered. Not sitting in a puddle of mud, but well watered. A little bit of that root ball fell apart. Now this is a pot-bound tree. It's been in the pot too long. Has big fat roots. So we're going to have to prune rather severely. The thing about those that are just right, that have to be root pruned just a little bit, is that if you don't root prune them, they'll become root bound later. Pot bound means root bound while it's still in the pot, and root bound can happen 2 or 3 years after taking out from the pot because of leaving roots in the wrong position if you don't cut them off. Now when you dig a hole for a mango, you want to remove the grass and weeds in a circle at least 3 feet wide. Most people are doing this in their lawns, and a lot of people think it looks real neat to have grass coming right up to the tree. It looks like such a perfect pasture for the sheep they don't have. And then the landscaper, whose job is to keep every last blade cut, will come with a weed eater and use the weed eater right by the trunk of the mango. Mangoes have rather loose bark when they're young, and all the weed eater has to do is just the tip of that nylon string hit the side of the mango tree, and suddenly the bark flings off. Sometimes all the way around. The top of the tree looks fine for the next month or two because the water's still coming up from the roots, but the roots aren't doing well because there's no longer sap from the leaves photosynthesizing going down to feed the roots because the bark's all gone. And it's the layer right under the bark, which ends up drying out, that transports the sap. So 2 or 3 months later, suddenly your tree dies, and it's because of the weed eater. So you want to keep all your grass and weeds like 3 feet away from the tree. Now for digging a hole here in this sand, I could be doing this from a wheelchair, it's so easy. Now we want a hole actually less deep than the root ball. We want the root ball to stick up about 1 inch. And we don't need for the hole to be much wider than the container. A couple inches wider just to make it easy to get the root ball in and have enough space to work the original soil back in. I actually got that too deep. Still too deep. So easy to correct now though. And if one puts a tree in a little bit too high, one can always bring a little more soil and add around the top. That's so much easier than dealing with a tree that's in a basin and sits in water during storms. Mangoes can handle some of that, but it doesn't do them good. Now, this tree has 3 nice low branches that we want to promote the survival of. And then we want another layer of branches higher up. This branch is close to the others. I'll remove them. So I'm talking about shaping the tree, but I'm also doing this because I'm going to cut some rather large roots. So we need to have less of the top remaining so that the roots that do survive after the pruning will have less top to have to maintain. Otherwise, the whole tree could die if we leave too much of the top on after cutting a bunch of the roots off. Move! Yeah, move! It is a good idea to wear safety glasses when doing this because one can flick sand or wood chips up into one's eyes. See there, I cut a root that's at least 1/8 of an inch in diameter. The plant will miss that for a while. Most any kind of clippers will work, but these needle nose ones are the easiest to work with. And of course one does need to sharpen them once in a while, especially when cutting into sand, which dulls them pretty fast. Actually, that wasn't as bad a root trimming as I had imagined it would be. I'm not trying to deal with these ugly roots here. If we tried to cut those off, we'd kill the plant. So I'm actually putting the root ball in a little bit crooked, so that the top will be straight. Put the original soil back in. No fertilizer, no compost. And this is nothing about being organic. This is instructions for anybody. Do not put fertilizer or compost into the planting hole when you plant mangoes or a lot of other fruit trees. There are exceptions. If you plant guavas, they like a lot of compost in the hole. Certainly bananas and papayas, which aren't actually trees but herbs, also benefit from compost in the hole. But if you put compost in the hole when you plant mangoes, the tree has a high likelihood of being dead within 3 years. And it will look very sickly for a long time before it finally dies. Compost in the hole is terrible for mangoes. But now that the hole is filled, after we water it in, then it would be okay to put like ½ inch of compost on top as an instant topsoil, and then mulch. I don't think we brought any compost or mulch here to use today, but so this is not the normal way to water a tree except at the moment of planting. We want to pack that loose soil in. Now I'm being careful not to hit the root ball with this strong stream of water. I'm hitting the hole just outside of the root ball to pack in the soil so we don't have air pockets. And of course we need to get this powdery soil moistened so that it's not shocking the roots. We could have put some water in the hole before actually sticking the tree in. Because it's powdery dry especially, it'll take a bit to soak in and we'll need to repeat. So I'm moving more of the original soil into the area where the soil level surface and the level of the soil surface has dropped already by nearly 2 inches. So we'll do a second packing. Fill in a bit again. next stage should be using about 3 bags of compost, mulch. We can use 1 bag of compost all around outside here, and then 2 or 3 bags of mulch. Get it nice and thick. That will support our ridge here, that will help us water here, get the water to hold there. And we will also need to water outside so that that soil is moist and attractive to the roots that we do want to be growing out there. It makes no sense to expect a tree to root in if we have powdery dry soil all around the root balls. 1 month from now we will fertilize, and we won't just fertilize where the roots are now. We'll fertilize out another foot or so beyond, where we want the soil to be fertile and welcoming to the roots. And of course, that fertilizer can be either conventional or organic. All of the nursery produced fruit trees that I know of in the state of Florida are produced conventionally. But if from the time of planting you start using organic fertilizer, 3 years later you can claim the fruits produced that year as being organic. So the 3 years, it's a transitional period. So we're finished now, except for putting a little bit of compost on top and then mulch. Without the mulch, especially here in this hillside, you can see we'll have erosion problems, and we'll have a hard time irrigating to get the water to soak in properly, because it'll run off. Now, preferably one will be watering with a nice rain head on the hose, so that you get well spread, gentle watering.